Shirin Ali, thank you for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And you are in the graduate program at the Medill School of Journalism. We appreciate you joining us. You recently wrote an article for us, and that can be seen on our website, IllinoisChannel.org. And as we are covering the 2020 election and what a different election it is, all kinds of things have changed. We just had the Democratic National Convention online. And what we're going to be talking about today, I say for the viewers, is the fact that, so many of the younger people, as you would expect, get their information from online and not necessarily from traditional news organizations. And that's going to have an impact because of the closure of some of these colleges where they normally would be walking around on campus and enjoying the summer and fall weather. So Shirin Ali, tell us with that as a foundation, tell us about the article you wrote and what impact the coronavirus shutdown is going to have conceivably on the youth vote.
Yeah, I'd love to. A lot of young people, they, rely on organizations at their colleges to kind of remind them to go out and vote, give them really important information about voting. So, how do you register to vote? When do you need to register to vote before an election? And they also tell you, where the nearest polling place is, what kind of identification do you need when you go to vote. So they provide a lot of critical information for young people to inform them on the best way to vote. A lot of times, kids in college, they just turned a voting age or they've maybe only voted in one or two elections. And so sometimes they don't even know exactly what information they need. So they rely a lot on organizations on campus to kind of keep them informed and to just really remind them about how important it is to get out and vote and all the information that they need to inform their vote.
We want to bring up a graphic here that is a outtake from your article. And as we see here, it says, in an analysis of political outreach on social media conducted by Circle around the 2018 midterms, only 28% of youths aged 18 to 24 had heard or read about the election's social media, but they were not contacted by political parties or campaigns. Let me ask, does that mean that these political parties and campaigns that might otherwise be contacting the students on campus, are they going to be losing out, or who is that a big mistake on the part of these political parties?
Yeah, so I will say that, this isn't to say that, political parties don't ever reach out to young people. I think they definitely do. However, I think that the scale that political parties and, just voting organizations in general reach out to young people at a much lower level than they do perhaps voters that have been voting, for, at least 20 or 30 years that have a very long and established voting pattern. So what this data is really saying is that, young people, especially in, the political climate we're in right now, they're really engaged in politics. They really want to have their voices heard. And they, kind of recognize the power that their vote has. But, political campaigns, they don't have, the voting patterns of young people, right? Because these guys maybe haven't voted in an election yet, or they've only voted, in one or two elections. So, political campaigns don't necessarily target, your average, 18 or 19-year-old. And I think that it is a really big opportunity for political campaigns to reach out to these young people, inform them about, the candidates that they're trying to push for, the issues that they care about, and also give them really important information about voting. Tell them about what the voting deadlines are, what voter registration deadlines are, how to submit an absentee ballot application. Tell them about ballot drop boxes that are relatively new this election cycle due to COVID. So I think that the data really shows that young people are a really big opportunity for political campaigns to reach out to.
It depends with students. There's no one thing, but if they're on college campuses, they may frequently be away from where they live, so they're going to have absentee voting, and maybe it's the first time they're voting, or if they have voted before, they voted in the traditional way, going into the voter booth. So even if they voted before, which might have been simple and clear, they could be confused by the absentee voting process. And then do they contact, if they're at the University of Illinois, let's say, but perhaps they're from Hawaii, they may not know, do they have to contact the voting people in Hawaii or the voting people in Champaign-Urbana? Which frankly, I don't know that either. So
Yeah,
we can see
exactly.
how there could be some confusion on this.
Exactly, yeah.
And especially too, if they wanted to vote, maybe, in some instances, there might be a major race for sheriff, let's say, which is a local election that could be taking place back in their home state, wherever that is, and they're not just going to be as familiar with who are the candidates in that hot local race, or sometimes the local county might want to be saying we're going to put a curfew on bars at 11 o'clock, that they would want to say no, don't do that, but. So
Yeah.
I think this is the thing. I want to make sure that we don't make it sound like the youth vote are incapable of walking into a voter booth and voting, but
Right.
that there are other complexities that, for those of us who have always just gone to a local election booth and voted, it seems simple, but it can become more complicated, right?
Right, exactly, exactly. I agree with that. Young voters, they don't have as much experience with voting. Maybe they've only voted in one election, and that happened to be, while they were still in their hometown, and they just physically went to, the closest polling station. But now they are in college, and they're not sure about, I want to vote. I know there's an election coming up, but, I'm not in my hometown. So how does that work? So, I think there's just a little bit of lack of, there's a information gap that kind of needs to be filled for young people to kind of make sure that they have the right information and the right tools to be able to vote. It's just due to, I think, a little bit of lack of experience, and there's an opportunity there for organizations and political campaigns to provide that information.
How important is, when we say, first of all, the what age bracket are we actually talking about, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that we're talking about, mostly kid or young people that are between the ages of 18 to 25. So people that are, still relatively younger, and just haven't had as much experience
And that would make
voting.
sense. They're in college or just the first time voters. How
Right.
big of a are they significant, to the extent that the parties aren't on campus to reach out to them? We had these tables that set up with literature, and they say, vote Republican, vote Democrat, vote Green, or whatever. And that's easy, and you can sit there and engage in a conversation if you're the young voter and get some information. That's what's missing. But how significant? Why should the rest of us who are not young voters care? Are they a big part of the voting bloc? Did you see that in your research?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We definitely did. So, in actually, which may be surprising to some people, young voters, they actually outvoted older generations in the 2018 midterms and in the 2016 presidential election. So, I mean, we're talking about voters between the ages of, 18 to like 35, 34. They outvoted older generations by about 2 million votes in each election. So they definitely have a very strong or a very powerful position within the electorate, and they're significant in number. And I think that political parties, whether you're Republican or Democratic, either way, this is a key demographic that has a lot of voting power. And so I think organizations that recognize that, they can have a very clear advantage, because these are young people that are really looking for information. They want to be reached out to. And so I think any organization that realizes that and takes advantage of it is really the smart thing to do, because it's a large voting bloc. They have a lot of power and influence. It's just a matter of realizing that.
And we have seen throughout the history, certainly of the last, say, 50 years or so. I remember what we might call the initial youth movement of the 1960s, when you had a lot of demonstrations against the Vietnam War. And that voting bloc have a lot of lasting impact. In fact, we still see, I think, in many ways, the environmental movement of today came out of the 60s. That really wasn't there before. So when we have the evolution of our society, the newer voters can often be the people that are bringing a new sensibility of an issue and are the ones with new ideas and lead to change. Do you have, this might be an unfair question because it's not your job to be a political consultant, but having done the article, did you have any thoughts that if you were advising political parties in this environment, what would you recommend they do to reach out to those new voters or first-time voters?
I would really say that you need to reach out to them in on platforms that are native to young people. So this might seem obvious, but utilize social media. I mean, young people spend a lot of time on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. They always are on their phones or have a laptop nearby. So reach out to them in ways that you know they will be there and engage with you. And I would also say, pay attention to the issues that young people care about. So, for example, a lot of a lot of the climate movement over the last few years has really been pushed by young people. So we've seen, protests and movements happening all over the country about climate justice and just more environmental awareness. And you see young people at the forefront of those issues. And even more recently with the, Black Lives Matter movement, you're seeing young people all over the country really mobilize and organize about issues that they care about. So I think it's just really like listening and paying attention to what young people are talking about, and candidates kind of showing how they can help advocate for those same issues, and that they care about the same things that young people do.
Well, Sharon Ali, we will close out and let you get on with your Saturday, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Again, the article is on the front page of the IllinoisChannel.org, and we recommend you read it. Sharon Ali, good luck to you in your career, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.